intros, and that's kind of what that intro was. And I have a little video here. I know there's a video right after a little intro video, but I thought this was kind of funny. This was an old commercial. I think it was a few years back. You may remember it, but I thought it was kind of fitting here for what we're going to be talking about.
How much are they asking? Well, that's a lot of money for a debt. I hate to tell you this, but you're getting robbed. Did you hear me? You're getting robbed.
I'll replay it. I'll replay it so you can actually see it. Sorry.
How much are they asking? Well, that's a lot of money for a debt. I hate to tell you this, but you're getting robbed. Did you hear me? You're getting robbed.
Communication problem. I thought it was great. Not advertising for American West. But we started the series last week, and I wanted to talk about really the big thing I think we've got to understand as a church. You know, if you're visiting and you're not a Christian, I want you to understand about the church. Our job is to get the message of Jesus out to as many people as possible. Like, that's our job. The Great Commission was Jesus told his disciples, and he's telling us, he says, go and make disciples. So our job is, as Christians, the job of a follower of Christ is we need to praise him and everything, and we need to go take the message of Christ out to as many people as possible. Go and make disciples of everyone we possibly can. So that's what he's telling us. So I think what's important, what we talked a little bit about last week, was we've got to be very intentional. And the church has to be extremely intentional about going out, talking to people, answering questions, about being prepared, about sharing this message, but doing it in a way that people get. Because if we're ever going out and trying to share the message of Christ out to people and it's not understandable, then we miss the point. We totally miss it. If the church is not getting it out there where people can understand it, then we're messing up. We're not doing what he's calling us to do, to get it out there to everybody that we possibly can, and giving them an opportunity to learn about Christ. You know, I was thinking about this, and our culture is not, you know, as dominating Christianity as maybe it used to be in the past, and it seems to be progressing more and more that way, like away from God in a lot of ways. And we got to understand that, which is why I think it's so important for us now as a church to be more intentional about this, about taking this message and sharing it with people, but doing it in the most understandable way possible. Not changing anything, not changing the Bible, not watering it down. Understand me on that. I'm never for that. But we sometimes the church comes out and tries to explain to people, and we don't do it in a way that everybody can get that. You know, I mean, the purpose is for everybody to get it, to everybody to get the message of the cross, and then be able to respond to it in the best way they possibly can. So we're in a different culture now where, you know, I was a missionary for a little while, shared that with some of you guys, but this had me thinking about this in a lot of ways with this sermon series. That we send people over to other countries, we train people like, okay, we want you to go to this country, and what do? You say, okay, you need to learn as much as you can about this culture, you need to learn about them, you need to dress like them, you need to talk like them, you need to eat like them, you need to do all these things so that you can befriend them and get close to them and share Christ with them. You know, move all the things that are not important, that are not essential, and then go and talk to people, tell them about Christ. We say that when we go to other places, but now it's right here where we are. It's in our own culture. And sometimes we think it's far away, but I could just take here in the U.S. and just right here, there's so many different cultures. We're not in this predominantly Christian culture anymore. Like it's slowly drifting away from that. We've got to understand that. So the job of the church, you know, again, if you're not a Christian here and you're listening to me, don't check out. This is for everybody here, because I want you to understand what the church is doing and what God wants to do, you know, for you. The church has to be mindful of this and be prepared and ready and be willing to do whatever it takes to reach people for Christ. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. Now, I introduced a word last week, contextualization, big word. But really what we're talking about in that, I'll have a definition for you up here in a second, or have it up there now. This is head there. This is more of a Now you can go online and you can look up this word, and there's lots of different meanings for this, and there's lots of different people who will describe it a different way, and there's lots of debate on whether we should do this in the church or not. Now I'm giving more of a mild definition of this, and this is presenting the unchanging truths of the gospel within the unique and changing context of cultures and worldviews. This is basically what I'm saying is the church has to be willing to do whatever it takes to reach people for Christ. There's a church that one of the pastors I really like, it's a big church, and they say, their motto really, one of the things that they do, they say, we're willing to do whatever it takes. We're willing to do anything short of sin to reach people for Christ. And I really like that. Now some people, I've seen some Christians kind of get on that and just say, well, that's wrong. You said, that sounds like sinning. And it's no, the very definition, he says, we're willing to do anything short of sin to reach people for Christ. And that means stepping out and trying different things. That means going to places that maybe no other people are going. That means getting out of your comfort zones and doing things, getting into cultures with people that are different from you and going and talk to people about Christ. That's what the church should be doing. And I think that's what God wants us to do. That's what the church is supposed to be doing in our culture. Now we're going to be looking at Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 as he's talking to the Corinthian church, and really this is, to me, it's one of the best ways we can look at it in the Bible of doing this. My way of explaining contextualization, how you're willing to go out into the world to whoever and be willing to just do different things to reach people for Christ. Be willing to do anything short of sin to reach people for Christ. And we're going to look at that because I think it's important for us, because if the church isn't willing to step out there and isn't willing to get out of our comfort zones, isn't willing to do whatever it takes to reach people for Christ, then we're going to be extremely ineffective. You may be a non-Christian out there. You may be somebody who's just checking this out. You're thinking about this, or you may talk to somebody later who's just thinking about this, and they're questioning now. I think it's important for you to get this, to understand the lengths that God wants to do and what He's calling His church to go out there and reach you. So we're going to look at this. This is in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, what Paul was saying we should do, and how we should go reach people, and how he acted. 1 Corinthians 9, 19 through 22. He said, though I'm free and belong to no one, I've made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews I become like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law I become like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law I become like one not having the law, though I'm not free from God's law, but I'm under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I become weak to win the weak. I become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in His blessings. Now, I love these passages, but it's not always the greatest to read. Like reading through that, it's always like, it seems like a tongue tie. You twist your ears, you're trying to read these words when he's saying that. But it's really important. I used to think about Paul, like if you know anything about the Bible, you've read it in any way, you look at Paul and he just seems like he's this hardcore, like no-nonsense type of guy. I think he was. But I used to look at Paul and I would think, well, Paul was this, very, I would say just stuck in the past, like it has to be this way. Maybe very much like a traditionalist, like it has to be this way. You can't change anything in any way. You know what I mean? Like there's some people that's just like, it's got to be this way. You can't change it in any possible way. And I always thought Paul was kind of like that. Now, what I love about him, he's not that way completely. I love it. He's very bold. He's very no nonsense. Like he's going to tell people about Christ. And he called out people. He called out Peter when Peter was messing up. I mean, he's extremely bold, and he sticks to the truth, and he doesn't change it anyway. But what I love is that he has that, and it's mixed with his, I guess I would say, like flexibility in the way he did ministry. Not changing anything, not watering it down, not saying I'm going to go to these people and give them a lighter message of Christ and say you don't have to just be him, you can do something else. Now he would give the truth, but I like his flexibility in ministry. Like you just read the verses, like he's willing to do different things. He's willing to go to different cultures and say, this isn't what I normally do. This isn't my culture. This isn't maybe the things that I celebrate, but I'll go and do this so that I can be with them, become friends with them, and tell them about Christ. He said, I'm willing to go and just get out of my comfort zones and share Christ with these people. So that's what I love about it. This is what I think about Paul, and I think it's a good thing. If you are a Christian and you're thinking of well, what's a good life motto? really, that I can have. Put this one up here. This one is glorify God and bring people to Christ. That's what I think about with Paul. It's just, I guess, a way to like simplify it in a lot of ways. What should we be doing? Just in a very simple way as a Christian, glorifying God in everything that we do. And then the Great Commission, he says, I want you to go and make disciples. Glorify God and bring people to Christ. Now, it's very simple in that way, but I think sometimes we complicate being a Christian and what it means. It's not always simple to do this. It's not simple for so many people or everybody to be doing it. Every Christian will be doing this. Glorify God and bring people to Christ. That is, I believe, the big purpose of the church of Christians. We should be doing this in everything we do. Glorify God and bring people to Christ. That's what he was calling us to do. If you're looking for a life motto, I think that's a good thing to really look at and model your life. As a Christian, don't do that. If you're new to church and you're thinking about like, what is this church all about? I want you to just follow through with this message. Because I think it's important. I'm talking about what the church be doing, but again, I want you to understand like why the church be doing this, and why is God calling us to do this, and just like I said, the great lengths that He's wanting to go and reach people with Christ. There's another. I'm throwing some definitions out here to you. I don't want to do this all the time, but there's another word, missional, that I want you guys to get. We're talking about missional. This is another word you can go in and find a ton of different definitions, different ways, and how they describe it. But I want to read this to you, missional, about the church and what the church should be doing. And again, what I want people who aren't in the church to really understand about the church. Being missional teaches that the church has a mission because Jesus had a mission. There's one mission which says that the missional church is a community of God's people that defines itself and organizes its life around its real purpose of being an agent of God's mission to the world. In other words, the church's true and authentic organizing principle is mission. When the church is in mission, it is the true church. I like that explanation there, and I wanted to bring out the word missional to us so that we understand church and what we're trying to do. This is a huge part of who God is. When we think about being missional, when we think about the purpose in the world and going out and reaching people. There's another thing, I told you lots of definitions, and then I'm done with definitions here. Missio Dei, I didn't just pull out a dictionary and start writing stuff down. I need some information. Missio Dei, we're talking about, this was a term that was really kind of became popular in the second half of last century, but it says the mission of God or the sending of God. This is what Missio Dei means, either the mission of God or the sending of God. Now, why is this important when I talk about the church being prepared to go out into the world and just be willing to do whatever it takes? Why is this important? And why is this important for those who are searching the church and searching God to understand this? Because I want you to understand about who God is. God is not just wanting to add mission to church and doing this, but God is, it's almost a part of who He is. He's the sending God. He's in mission. And the church is to be a part of that. Christians, you as the church are to be a part of what God is doing in this world. Like, He's actively pursuing people. He's actively pursuing those who are away from Him. And the church is to be a part of that, is to be involved in that. Missio Dei. He is the mission God or the sending God. So it's more of really who God is. There is church because there is a mission. I heard somebody say that. There is church because there is mission, not vice versa. Again, there is church because there is mission. So you get that. God He's a sending God. He's on a mission. It's part of who He is to go and reach people. And so the church exists because God is working in the world. So I put that on there because I don't want us to think that missions and what we do is just something we really add to the church. And here's another thing I would explain with that. This isn't a definition. Missions is not simply some department or program of a local church, but it's the active participation of the church with God in this world. And I think that's extremely important for us to understand. It's the church, when we talk about missions and we talk about going out and reaching people, this is our active role that we should be participating in what God is already doing in this world. This isn't something, we're planning a trip in June to, this next summer to Nicaragua. We call it a mission trip and we do things in that way. But I don't want us to think when we talk about missions that that's just something that we add to the church. Like we're here and we have a meeting and we come together and we're like, Kyle, we need to add something. Well, maybe we need missions. Maybe we need a missions department, in some way. Now, I know we call them that, but what I want us to understand is that the church should be actively involved in what God is doing. Missions. He's actively involved in reaching people. That's extremely important for us to understand about God, understand about the church, understand about what we should be doing. That's the main thing. It's not some department that we add into the local church, but it's our active involvement in what God is already doing. Are we doing that? Do we think about that really as the church? I wanted to introduce you to some of those terms because I think it'll help us understand it as we talk about, this series I'm calling Context. I'm talking about contextualization and throwing a lot of things at us. But I think it's important for us to understand, why should we be willing to do this? Why should we'd be willing to get out of our comfort zones and go and talk to people? Because God is calling us to do that. That's our purpose as the church, to go and relate to people. It's our purpose as a church to go out there and give God's message to the world so that people can get that. This is what I would say. This is why I call our purpose statement here at this church, connecting people to God and teaching them to do the same thing. It's just something I wanted us to be able to remember in a simple way about our purpose, and making disciples, and what God has called us as a church is to go out and connect people to God and then teach them to be able to do that with others. We teach people about God, and then we teach them to go out and go reach other people, because that's our job. Our job isn't just to build up this building and we come together and we sing, we have functions, and we come together and it's a nice little group, we're tight, we hang out, we do all this stuff, and then we forget about the world, we forget about everybody else outside of our group. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to come together, praise God, we come in here and we encourage each other, and we thank God for saving us, those who trusted in Him, because we didn't deserve that. And then we say, okay, now we got to go out there and actively pursue as many people as we possibly can and lead them to God. That's what He's calling us to do. And I think that should be our purpose as we think about this. So as I go back to, I don't have them up here, but back to what I was reading there in chapter 9 with Paul, in 1 Corinthians 9. I didn't read the first section of it, but the first section is really Paul. He's kind of giving his credentials as an apostle, as this unique position. He's there, and some people were questioning Paul. They were saying, okay, I don't think he's an apostle. I don't think he was with Jesus. I don't think he's got this authority from God in the same way as maybe others. And so he's coming to these people, and he was having to always answer questions to people. People were saying, I just don't believe we can trust him in all these ways. And so this is what he's doing. In his idea of being willing to do whatever it takes to reach people, he's coming in there, and he's laying it out there. He's giving them his credentials. And he's even quoting from Jesus, back in Luke 10, and he's saying, it was interesting, he said in Luke chapter, in 1 Corinthians 9, he said, as an apostle, as this servant of God, as this minister of God, he said, I should be getting paid for this. I should be getting taken care of, is what he was pointing out to them. He said, this isn't something we came up with, but this is how it should be. I should be taken care of as a minister. But this is what he was saying. He's laying it out there and saying, I deserve to get compensated for this and be taken care of. But this is where he was saying, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to reach people. He says, I don't want you guys to be thinking I'm all in this for the money or any other reason. He said, I'm going to lay down all this stuff, all my rights as an apostle, all my rights to be taken care of, just so I can reach you guys. I want you guys to come to Christ because I want you guys to know that I care about you, that I love you, and it's not about any other reason but praising God and bringing you to God. And that's what he was saying. He was going through, you can read that in the first part of chapter 9. He was laying down, he's saying, I'm laying all this stuff aside because I want to reach you. I want you to come to know God. This is the purpose of the church. And he was saying this. It's convicting in a lot of ways. Are we willing to do that as Christians? Are you willing to go out there and, as he said in those verses, make yourselves a slave to everyone? That's what he was talking about. He goes on in verses 19 through 23, what I read. Remember? And he said to those who are under the law, become like one under the law. To many of the Jews who were still submitting themselves under the law, the old law, and they were saying, we need to do this to be closer to God, or just their cultural things. He was doing all that. He wasn't coming in there and changing the message of salvation. And I believe he would stop them there. But he was willing to put himself under these cultural standards that people had, living the way that they lived, because he wanted to get to them and befriend them and tell them this is what it means to live for Christ. This is who Christ is. And he said, those who were not under the law, he said, I would go to them, and and live differently in that way. Not being a hypocrite, but just, I would say, cultural standards, coming in there and living among them and showing them what it means to live for Christ. And so Paul, he's there and he's saying, I'm putting all my rights to the side and I'm living with people the way that they live so I can tell them about Christ. That's what he was saying there. I think that's huge right there, what Paul's talking about. He's submitting himself. And he even says here, going back to verse 19, I put it up again, just for us to think about it. He said, though I'm free and belong to no one, he said, I don't have any obligation to do this. Think about what he's saying. He says, I'm free. I don't have to do this. There's no obligation. He says, I've made myself a slave to everyone. Now, would you describe your life that way? Just the way, here we're all going to amen, on the side, and we're going to leave out of here. But would you say, throughout the week, as a Christian, you say, I've made myself a slave to everyone? But, what's the reason for it? To win as many as possible. Do we do that? I'll say it, Christians, I'm talking, that I don't always do that. I'll admit, it's a tough thing to make myself a slave to everyone. What a huge, example, great example that Paul is really showing us there as a church. We should be willing to do this. I make myself a slave to everyone under no obligation to do this, to win as many people as possible. I know that's a tough thing, and we want to really be built up, in so many ways, and not, put ourselves down or are we doing this. But I think it's important as a church to understand what our purpose is, to be servants of Christ and be servants of His will. We need to be reaching every people. We didn't deserve His forgiveness. Christ even said in Mark 10:45 up here, the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and give His life as a ransom for many. He's our example. He didn't come to be served. So the idea of Christians, you come into church, it's not that we come in here. Now, we want to come in, we want to be, encouraged. You don't want me up here like beating me down all the time and saying, you're a horrible person. I go out there and come back next week. You don't want that. But we've got to understand that this isn't all about us. This isn't about just coming in and it's like, now I'm saved, now I'm going to heaven, everything's great, and I can go back and do whatever I want. We have an extremely huge job in this world, and that's to go out and lead people to Christ. It's to live for God in every possible way and lead people to Christ. Now, I know there's, really in any church service, there's a possibility of two different people. Those who, being in the service, those who trusted in Christ, and then those who haven't, for whatever reason, I would say yet. My hope is yet haven't trusted in Christ. There's a possibility of that. And again, I would say, Christians, your job, our job as the church is to line up with this mission, this active mission that God is doing in this world. We need to jump in on it and be with Him and actively pursue as many people as possible. And so that's really what I'm talking about with this series is how do we do that? And it's be willing to do whatever it takes to reach people for Christ. Like Paul was talking about there, are we willing to do that? We have different cultures around here. It's not as if we come here and it's like, well, I don't need to change anything because we're all the same here. And it's just not true. There's so many different cultures and so many different people that you're not in contact with that we can go out there and be friends. I was thinking about how do we do this? So many times I've seen in the church where Christians are almost discouraged from going out to the places where people who don't know Christ are, people who are hurt, people in pain. This is what I would say. I would encourage you to go to places where people need to hear about Christ. Go to, this is sometimes controversial, but I'll say go to bars and talk to people. I'm not encouraging you to go out there and become an alcoholic and go out there and get in bar fights all the time. Like Jesus is right. Throw chairs at people. I'm not telling you to do that. But are we willing to go out there and talk to people that are hurt, people that are in pain? Go to places where sometimes Christians are going to look down on us and say, why are you doing that? And our model is, because Christ went to those places. He went to the people who needed to hear about it. He needed to go out. Now, I would caution you on that. If you're struggling alcoholic, and you can't, get around any kind of alcohol, maybe you don't go to bars. Maybe you don't need to do that. You know what I mean? I think we understand about this. If you're, a sex addict, you don't go to strip clubs to reach people. I don't think I need to say that. I think we understand, that's extremes. But you go to places that people need to hear about Christ. And I think too often we're afraid to do that as a church. We're afraid to step out there and go talk to people. There's a lot of people out there who are hurting. And not just in other places. Sometimes we can point out all these other states and other places in the world. Right here in Victoria, there's a ton of people around us oftentimes people around us who have misunderstood this message that the church has put out to them, and they don't think that they can be welcome here. They don't think that Jesus would die for them, and they don't think that they come into the church. And sometimes that's happened because we've possibly miscommunicated in the wrong place. Are we willing to step out there and do whatever it takes to take this message, make it understandable to them? Again, don't change it, but there's a way we can explain this to them. And then I would say to you out there, and the ones you're going to talk to who don't know Christ, they're still thinking about this. They're still thinking about this. I think one of the greatest things to think about this, with this message here, is that the creator of the universe is thinking about you. Guys, Christians, you can tell him, is thinking about you. Those out there who are questioning this, he's thinking about you when he asks the church to be willing to step out there and do whatever it takes to reach people for him. He's thinking about you. He wants us to be willing to step out there as Christians, and he's asking his church, imperfect people, that's who we are. He's asking his people to go out and do whatever it takes to reach them. To me, that's pretty amazing. To the links what God is willing to do for us. Because you may be thinking, people you talk to may be thinking, oh, there's no way God would want to do this. I think people need to hear that. People need to hear this message that the creator of the universe, he cares about you so much. He cares about you so much that he sent his son in the world to die for you. He didn't send him to die for perfect Christians. None of us were. We're all messed up. We're all needing the grace of God. And so some people need to hear this. They need to see that no matter their life and their mistakes and their troubles and their thoughts and everything that they've messed up in, no matter their situation in life, they know God loves them. The creator of the universe is thinking about you. And he asks us to be willing to go wherever and talk to whomever needs to know about Christ. I think it's important for us to remember as a church. Guys, I'm going to pray. We're going to have a song here. And I just want you guys, go ahead and bow your heads. Let's do that. Pray about this because we don't always do a great job of this as a church. I don't always do a great job of this. I'm talking about the worldwide church in general. Being willing to go out to people that are not in our church, who are different from us, and don't have the same beliefs as us right now. You know what I'm saying? Like I believe in God. I trust in Christ. I know where I'm going to go, but it's hard sometimes to go out and talk to people who say there is no God and they're questioning Him. And sometimes in church, what we do is we pull back because we're like, well, they don't deserve my time because how they're living. We step back and we don't do that. But we don't go to places where people need to know about it. And I just want to have you guys pray about that. How can we be better at this? How can we be willing to go where God is calling us to go and put ourselves last and make ourselves a slave to everyone, all the same? Are we willing to do that? I think there's probably a lot of repenting Christians we need to do. And if there's anybody here who needs to make a decision, I hope you're not making it. You're turning away from God because you don't think He's going to accept you because it's just not true. He will. And I want you to understand that. Guys, let's pray about that. Whatever decisions we need to make, whatever steps we need to take, let's do that. And let's don't wait anymore. So let's pray. Father, thank you for this word. In a lot of ways, it's encouraging. In a lot of ways, I know for me, it's convicting. Because I see so many things that I need to do better. I'm not great. I'm not perfect. And sometimes I just stay back and I read these words and I even talk about them. I say I need to be willing to do all this. I need to be willing to make myself a slave to everyone, but I don't always do that. And probably thinking that many of us here are the same way. And I just pray that you'll help us to do that. Help us to not just say we need to get better at this, but actually take a step forward and start following you with our whole hearts, living for you, and be willing to step out there to people who need to hear about you and put our freedoms aside and put our comforts aside and just talk to whoever needs to know about you. Help us to do that. Put people on our path where we're willing to talk to them. God, if anybody here needs to make any type of decision for you, they need to give their life to you. I pray that we'll do it. We'll see that you're waiting for them to turn to you. And you've accepted us when we turn to you. And I just pray that they'll do that. Be with us all here if there's things we need to turn from in our life and start following you more. Help us to do that, God. Whatever decisions we need to make, I pray we'll do it here today. Thank you so much. Jesus, thank you so much for dying on the cross. You died in our place where we deserve to be. You did not deserve to be there. Thank you so much for that. We pray in your name. Amen. You guys are going to sing. If you want to Go to pray, move around, you can.